Hey everybody, it's Alex here. Good evening. How is everyone today, tonight, wherever you guys are? Thanks for joining us. We have lots to talk about tonight, today, as I said. We have Vivian from iChongqing, and of course, you know who is involved. It's AJ from PTE. Well, without further ado, we're bringing them onto the program today. AJ, Vivian, ladies first. Vivian, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Alex. Hi, AJ. So I'm more than excited to be here. And yes, we have a lot of interesting content to cover today. Yeah, just let AJ go first to introduce himself.
AJ, go
Hi
for it, man.
everyone. How's everyone doing? Fresh from the Queen's funeral. We had television showing the funeral 24 hours a day. Every single program was showing it. Uh, Around 250,000 people went to see the Queen's Queen's body, and I was making a video actually. The British people are absolutely crazy. And there's one particular woman who was interviewing in front of the camera, and she said that seeing the Queen like this is her happiest moment, more happier than her having children. It's absolutely crazy. And I've got a lot of stories to tell you. I'll put it in another video, but yeah, I'm fine. And everything's going back to normal now in UK. Weather's back to normal where it's raining. But yeah, everything's looking good.
Yeah, so yeah, it's good to hear from you, AJ. So perhaps let me do a self introduction first. So just to for those of people who are still not familiar with me, so I'm Vivian from iChongqing. So I'm a reporter here with a specializing focus on political and economic news. So we cover a lot of interesting stories. Like we pitch stories from different angles, starting from like smaller things like with a focus on Chongqing's people's daily life, and we also have covered like a bigger, like a broader aspects, like like future investment and trade opportunities here in Chongqing. What to notice as a foreigner here in Chongqing. So yeah, we just cover a lot. We have covered a lot of events actually so far, and for example, like the Smart China Expo and the Western Fair for Investment, Western China Fair for Investment and Trade. And there's actually an upcoming one soon, perhaps in October and November, called the CCI Financial Summit, which stands for the China Singapore Chongqing connectivity initiative financial summit. So there will be like a lot of cooperations between China and Singapore in terms of the cross-border financing, investment, trades, and there will be like perhaps like the exchange of ideas on the shared interest of the logistics or even like the green finance. Those are the like fintech, those kind of like hot topics. So we will cover that soon. So we'll be ready for you guys.
All right, thank you for that, Vivian. Greatly appreciated to have you on today's program. So, let me set this up. Let me set this program up. As you can see, it says China's next move. Actually, that title, Vivian came over to me earlier today and said, Alex, this has to be the title for the show. I totally agree. Lots of stuff going on here in China. And as you said, we need to tackle it all. Now, AJ, just so we can kind of gear up this program today, I wanted to ask you, is the rhetoric about China, like, is there much focus in the United Kingdom on China as there is on, I guess, the Queen lately, and as well as the Ukraine? Or are people just getting tired of this Russian-Ukraine conflict? Are arrows now being pointed at China? Is China the next country to get canceled? What's your thoughts?
Unfortunately, yes, it's looking that way. It started in the COVID pandemic when a lot of Chinese students used to get beaten up in the streets or get abused. So there's a lot of anti-Chinese feeling going on in UK. The Chinese students that do come here, they keep themselves to themselves. They don't mingle with the English crowd. Unfortunately, most of the people in UK, they follow what the media tells them. And as you know, the media in UK is very anti-Chinese. There's never any good articles in about China. Never any articles about how China took 800 million people out of poverty and things like that. Never anything good. It's always bad news about China, and unfortunately, most people eat up that kind of nonsense. The same way they've eaten up all the nonsense about Ukraine, same way they're eating up all the nonsense about China. I mean, the last few days was a major drama where the Chinese delegation were, first of all, they were banned from coming to see the Queen.
Crazy.
Secondly, they were unbanned because I don't know, somebody made the decision if they were unbanned. Then Liz Truss actually overruled it and says they're banned again. And then somebody overruled Liz Truss to say, oh, they're unbanned now, so they can come. And I think it's the vice premier who came, and he was the only one wearing a mask in the in the church. And the funny thing was, Biden was put 14 places behind front row, and Biden was not happy. Biden stormed out at the end of the funeral. He stormed out. He didn't even speak to Liz Truss. He basically went back to his car and drove off because he was not happy being 14 rows behind. He was behind the Polish president. He was behind a lot of people who are not very important, and yeah, so the U.S. president wasn't very happy. But yeah, there's a lot of drama going on. There's a lot of anti-Chinese feeling going on in UK. A lot of people believe all this stuff about the Uyghurs. A lot of people believe that they still believe a lot of nonsense about China. And it's a shame, really. I mean, this is why channels such as myself opened up to try and educate people, to show the people the truth, China, and kind of trying to show people what China is really like and what China is really about, rather than what they hear from the media. So it's one of the reasons I opened up my channel, to be honest. But yeah, so it's
Well,
not good.
thanks for sharing that, AJ. So, Vivian, let's go over to you, and let's pick up a topic that may be of interest for you to open up your segment of the program tonight. Tell us about what's on your mind, what you've been following this week, maybe some things that you'd like to talk to the audience about.
Yes, despite yes, AJ just talked about the situation here that in the UK, and yeah, despite the situation, actually, I think China is still like inclined to opening up. Like it has like several movements that has been done in order to show its inclination. Oh God, yeah, it shows its like target to trying to have students, begin returning to China as COVID restrictions ease. So here recently I've read the news that China welcomes the return of foreign students and will be making arrangements for them in order to support them to resume their studies in China. So for some of the overseas students who incline to pursue for like academic education in China, they will be able to do that now. And according to some of the China's embassies in different nations, they have announced that the new policy that they will resume the issuance of visas for international students. And the students will be, submitting the visa applications, admission letters in order to returning to the campus issued by the Chinese institutions. So there will be students and there is a good news actually that students recently accepted for admission to Chinese universities will also be applied for the visas. So there was like China's embassies in Afghanistan or India, Indonesia. They're basically students are welcoming to return to China for like further education. So
Did they mention?
it does. Sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say that. Just add one like a point that it doesn't mean that China will abandon its zero COVID policy. For those international arrivals, they will be still required for like epidemic prevention. Like they have to still like conduct epidemic prevention controls and everything.
I guess my question is, I mean, when you're saying open, and AJ and I actually covered a little bit of this last week in our last live stream. My concern on that is if the company or country is preparing to bring students back in, there's a lot of preparation for that, not just the schools, but let's talk about airline routes, for an example. Still, I was looking at flights from Thailand direct, which I was told, prior to, I guess, the opening of this student visa, is that you can normally only come to China if it's a direct flight. Going through a secondary country is not possible, or transiting through a secondary country. Now, maybe they've given that up, but at the time, as much as about 3 months ago, flights were about $6,000 from Southeast Asia to $10,000 from United States of America. So I guess we can maybe gauge if there's a serious effort to let the students in by maybe looking at the airlines on what they're doing. Because my understanding is you just can't start a route. A lot of these airlines fly empty jets for 3 or 4 months before even any other passengers are on there. Have we heard anything about that? About airlines accepting students to come to China?
I think it depends. So like for now, like I think at least they have something like already offered for international students. It's not like, oh, we are restricting anyone like coming back or something. I think a good news that now for students who have been recently accepted for admission, they will be able to apply for visas. I think that's perhaps the first move that Chinese government has been committing to doing. Like that's basically like the first thing. And then they're saying that there will be like more arrangements for sure. So I assume that there will be like, say, because he said that it requires international arrivals to obey for the country's epidemic prevention policies. So a lot of people who undergo like a 7-day quarantine at a hotel, or even like a 3-day health monitoring at home, I think there will be like correspondent arrangements offered for those students in order to have their quarantine like set up and everything.
I'm going to highlight a story on here. This is Hong Kong flags COVID quarantine policy change wants an orderly opening up. Now, there's a lot of pressure in Hong Kong to compete against Singapore. As you know, that Singapore is starting they're really ramping it up in Singapore, trade shows, basically getting Southeast Asia rebooted. And these are rival cities. Singapore and Hong Kong are definitely rival cities, especially in the financial market. So here's something that I want to pose, and I think we may be onto something here, Vivian and AJ. My theory, this is a theory, of course I don't have any information on this, but if you read the tea leaves, as they say, I have a feeling that Hong Kong is going to announce here in the next day or two the scrapping of, we'll call it hotel quarantine, okay? Now, hear me out on this. So if Hong Kong does that, that means Hong Kong's open, rest of the world can fly in there, no problem. But I also feel that China will negotiate with this special administration region, the SAR, where they're going to say, the mainland's going to say, wait a minute, we will allow, and this is just an opinion, guys, okay? We will allow X provinces at the start, a slow opening, to travel to Hong Kong. So, for example, the Pearl River Delta area. Okay, so let's call it, cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou. You guys, for the first couple of weeks, you can come into Hong Kong, come in, visit, and then come back. But none of this, leaving China, like leaving, let's say Shenzhen to Hong Kong, and then flying out somewhere, and then coming back to Hong Kong and going home. I think they're going to use Macau and Hong Kong as, we'll call it, kind of like a family reunion type of an arrangement for the first little while, because I don't think that they can just open up what do we call it? Open up China. I think it's just too big. So I think a nice, small, slow, steady opening where you allow all your, let's say, relatives from around the world want to visit you. Well, they can't come to China right now, right? We know that, right? It's very difficult. But imagine if you said, well, you can go visit your family in Hong Kong and Macau. Now that doesn't sound like a bad option, right? Now, your family wouldn't be allowed into China because of the COVID measures. We get that. But if Hong Kong is opening and Macau is opening, and you can visit your family from mainland China there, I think that is going to be the first step. That's just my thing. Like as Kevin is saying here, the buffer zone of Hong Kong, Macau, SAR. That's exactly what I'm thinking, Kevin. So, yes, and he's on to me here. He's also saying the Greater Bay Area, basically the Guangdong province. So I think you guys see where I'm going with that. Any thoughts on that?
I think China aims for like more overseas students to come back, because I also feel like China needs like more global talents. You know, like having this portion of people like coming to China and having you know perhaps like the building like the mutual learnings between international students and domestic students. I think that's something like China also aims for the future, because as I observed that China's economy is transforming away from being led by investment and manufacturing only to being driven by consumption, services, and innovation. And I think this kind of like a mutual learning between domestic students or even like international students can be like one form of innovation, and that can serve further serve for the China's like industrial economy well, perhaps in the future. What do you think, AJ?
Yeah, I completely agree. Before I continue, Alex, I just want you to put up a link that I sent you on the private chat, and I was going to go through that quickly. Then I'll carry on with what you said, actually.
Sure, no problem. There we
So,
go.
so if we scroll down to somewhere near the middle, a bit more, I think. Yeah, that's it, and
Right about there.
that's it. Yeah. So can you see the part where it says there's about 44,000 Chinese students which have arrived in USA this year? Um, I think it's further, just here somewhere.
Sorry. Okay, so we
Um,
got all this.
it's
Let me look for it. You keep chatting. I'll look for it.
oh yeah,
44,000 or something. Oh, is this here?
46,000, 46,000.
Okay. Do you see it?
Yes, it's near just under the yellow bit. So somewhere. If you go up, actually, let's go further up.
Okay.
Here somewhere. Do you see any?
There we go.
Yep, I think
Yes,
spotted it.
46. Yeah, so it says here 46,000 Chinese students have gone to the United States to study, and the Indian number is quite high. I believe it's 77,000. But if you look at the figures for last year, if you scroll down, it will
Yep.
tell you also the figures for last year as well. If you go down to where I showed you, they should say that last year, 2021, there was 99,000 Chinese students which arrived, which is a drop from. Can you see this? So from
Yep.
99,000 to 46,000, that's a drop of half of the Chinese students who decided not to go to the US to study. And it's the same in UK as well. The Indian students have overtaken the Chinese students in UK. Um, so where do all these numbers go? That's the thing, because I think a lot of Chinese students have decided to stay in China and study and go to the universities in China, and that shows that local consumptions is working rather than going abroad, spending money, spending money on US universities, paying ridiculous tuition fees. This is all part of consumption where all of that money is spent within China. So rather than spending going abroad, there's no more need to go abroad. I mean, I just don't understand why a Chinese parent would let his children go to United States, for example, especially when you know Chinese students gets attacked, or
Hmm.
Chinese students, they don't get respected in the United States. And there's a lot of obviously violence going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. So I don't understand why a Chinese parent would agree to it. So I think you'll see that's why you see half the students now are staying at home. And this is good because this means that the money is going to stay in China, and also this means that the universities in China will have to improve. They'll have to get bigger. They'll have to provide for more spaces for local students. Plus, they have to provide spaces for international students coming in as well. So this is all part of consumption. Consumption is keeping everything at home. Every rather than you going out spending money abroad. All of that money gets circulated within China. So I just wanted to kind of make that point, really.
Well, I think it's a good point, and the other thing is all the lost revenue for those universities in United States. I mean, massive holes in their budgets, massive
Yeah,
holes.
I mean, 50,000 students, that's a lot of money. If you imagine how much money one student pays to university, we're talking well over $100,000 for one student. And then
Big money.
don't forget, yeah, don't forget, also these students buy a lot of designer goods when they go abroad. They do a lot of shopping, so it does really good for a lot of good for the economy. So if those 50,000 students are staying in China, that's the universities in China will obviously get better because you have more students. You have more students competing. You have more students, applying for top degrees. So the university in China will have to get bigger. Will have to, expand. Will have to provide for more students, and this is just going to be good for China.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
in the end it is, but we also saw a huge amount of graduates last year. I think about 10 million. Vivian, is that about correct? Of Chinese students
Tim,
graduated?
I think it should be more than that.
Was it more?
Like,
Was it more? Wow. Okay,
yeah.
that's a lot. Okay, I mean, where are these
And
people going
because
to find jobs? That's my concern.
yeah, because I think from my own experiences, like because I attend universities in Canada, right, and but I still have a lot of friends here attend university in China, and I think what China is doing right now is also change their education system, not only in universities but also for vocational trainings. So in the past, in universities, there always like there is like heavily theory-based lessons that offered for our students, and there's always like lacking of practical skills. So it turns out that when students are ready to graduate, they still cannot find a job. So that's a really a big issue, right? And also in the case of vocational training, the content was often outdated, and there was always like shortage of expertise among teachers. And so basically, even like vocational curricula haven't been updated to keep pace with the changing economy. So for example, I have a really good example. So for example, like journalism. So I was majoring in journalism when I was in Canada, and I knew that for some of journalism courses that offered in China here, the instead of like focusing on more about how to train students to being a like a multimedia reporter, they focus more on the theory based, like writing papers or even like having thesis statements. So they instead of like teaching people how to use a camera, how to like edit a video, or even like train them as an anchor or something, some of students they basically do not have those skills to be a real like a multimedia reporter. So I think that's kind of like an issue, like for just having the example of journalism courses, but like it reflects to other major as well. Like so for example, like some of like the automation or something like tech
Yep.
programs. So I think this for now, China's new challenge is more to transfer the education skill development to deliver the talent that needed for an innovative, digitalized, as well as the post-industrial economy. So now,
Sure.
sometimes they offer. So sometimes they offer like academic certificate, as well as a high-level vocational skill qualification certificates. Both required. It can be both required in the future, for potential students to find a job. And I think that's something like happening right now in China. But I'm not sure if that's happening in the UK or even like other countries as well. How do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it happens in UK. I mean, UK universities have been around for a long time, since the 1800s or 1700s even. But I think one of the advantages of studying abroad, like you've studied in Canada, but one of the advantages studying abroad is you do learn English, and you do learn to kind of work with Westerners, and also you do kind of get a lot of experience. If you're in a really top university, like in London or in Manchester, even, or Scotland, Edinburgh, for example, you learn a lot. I mean, you learn English first of all. You learn how the international way of life works. You know how Westerners think and how to deal with Westerners. So you get a lot of life experience. And the problem with learning in China, you miss out, because what happens is, when you're an employer and you have two CVs in front of you, you rather pick the person who can speak English and been abroad and stuff like that. So it gives them I guess, a small advantage. But I think times are changing. I think within probably next 5 or 10 years, employers are not going to care about that really. I think Chinese universities, I know they have improved a lot. I mean, I know friends who have actually studied in China, and who have come back to UK, and they have told me that they don't see a difference between Chinese universities and English universities. They don't feel there's a difference. I think Chinese universities have caught up a lot, and they said, in fact, it's more harder in China to study, because it's more difficult. They push you a lot more, while in the UK it's a lot more easier. I think they push you less, I guess, and yeah. So I guess it's like, I think China's universities are definitely improving. I mean, when I come to China next year, I want to probably also go to some universities and check it out for myself, and talk to a few people. But I think definitely, over the last few years at least, things have really improved, and especially the last 2 years, I think Chinese universities have really improved. They've got a lot of really good talent, past students from abroad, or international talent as well, which are teaching classes as well. So yeah, things are looking good, especially the last few years. And I think with all these new cities popping up, like Zhongyan as well, and Ordos, there's new university campuses there, really big ones, which have really good reputation, especially in Ordos. I heard they've got really good schools and universities there. So things are really developing and looking up, I think, in China.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Ordos and you mentioned these smaller communities. And there's a government, to my understanding, incentivizing families to actually move there, and incentivizing for a place to live. If you buy an apartment here, you can put your son or daughter at a prestigious university. Now, I saw some reports about the the Western media was kind of targeting those cities and saying, "Well, look, hey, they have this city, and half the apartments are empty, even though they don't talk about it when it's filling up. They go there when it's empty to say, hey, look, there's no one here, and then they actually never go back. But they're like, wow, the city's pretty empty and no one's going here. But look, they're incentivizing people to move here, and they're giving them, if they enroll their children in school and buy in this area. Well, isn't that what everybody does at the end of the day? They move to a community, maybe where there's a good school for their kids,
Yep.
where
Yep.
they want to bring their kids in a safe neighborhood, where there's no knife stabbings or shootings,
Exactly.
okay? And they buy in an area. Of course, they're going to enroll in the school and have dreams that maybe, if your son or daughter can go to that local university. And the housing prices probably will move up if there's incentivizing for that. Now, what does that do? Well, here's the interesting thing about China and the interesting thing about the rest of the world. I have never seen a media focus in on empty apartments, even though a lot of these apartments are bought and paid for financial reasons here in China. People invest, but I've never seen a media target a country that has more houses than actually people. So doesn't that kind of prove a point here? Where in America you have homelessness, people on the streets,
Yep.
people in Canada. I mean, guys, I can go on and on and on. But just the other day, I opened up a newspaper on a small site in Tucson, Arizona. I don't know what the population of Tucson, Arizona. I'm bringing this up for an example here. Okay, let's just see. Tucson, Arizona. I don't know if the audience. Okay, population 545,000. By Chinese standards, is there a city that small? Anyway, 6,000 recorded homeless people in that city alone.
Wow.
No houses, whatever. Many people fall through the cracks, whether it's drug abuse, they've lost this, that, or whatever. But here's a country that has more houses, and the Western media targets it and says, well, look, there's empty houses. Well, where are the homeless, though? Oh, well, but there's empty houses. But where are the homeless people? But there's empty houses, and they're so fixated on it. And that is also something that actually ties into when we're talking about universities. And what Vivian's saying is university students coming back to China. I have to be honest with you guys here. When you're sitting down and you're conducting an interview, if you're an employer interviewing someone for a new position, I get it where there is some credibility, maybe focus on certain universities, whether it's a medical university. I get all that. But if you're a Chinese person and you have an opportunity to not take on massive, and I'm talking massive amount of student debt loads, and you can get a relatively good education, a good degree, and then find yourself a job. I mean, I was just telling Vivian the other day, my sister's in her mid-50s, and she just finished paying off her 30-year student loan. And it
Wow.
wasn't at 1 or 2% back then. 30 years, you're talking 9.25%. And people say, oh, but why didn't you renegotiate that and do this and that? Well, when you borrow about $100,000 to get a university degree in Canada or the United States, you're behind the 8 ball immediately. That's a saying, if you haven't heard it, Vivian. You never want to be behind the 8 ball, but it's tough to come out of that. And, I'm going to shift in this conversation here, and we'll come back to the education talk in a minute. But with this debt load that's coming on, with all this money that is being borrowed, banks used to enjoy lending money, and they enjoy lending money even more now. Where you're seeing tonight, potentially, the Fed in the United States is looking at raising interest rates again here. Now,
Yep.
they're talking 0.75 points, maybe a 100-point interest rate hike. You should see the mortgages that are being taken out now. You could
Yep.
get a 30-year mortgage maybe 2 years, 3 years ago at maybe 2%, 2.25%. Am I far off on that, AJ?
Not far off, no. No.
Not far. Okay, depends what country,
Yeah.
but let's say it's U.S. two and a quarter.
Yeah. Sure.
Now there's 6 3/4, maybe flirting with
Yeah.
7. Do
Well,
that amortized on 30 years. How much
it's gonna
interest that
it's
you're
gonna
paying
go up to
back?
10. Yeah, it's gonna go. It's actually gone up to 10 because interest rates is based on speculation, and they know interest rates are going to be rising, so they're basically going on 10 now. You can't get anything cheaper at the moment.
So if you got a 10-year, oh man, just get out the mortgage calculator, guys, and just tell us what you'd be paying in interest. I don't think you're going to be paying, even on the principal of that asset, we'll call, probably for a good decade into it. You'll be hitting interest quite a bit there, and then when you're there, you're still paying the property tax on top of that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a mess, and I kind of agree with you on this, Vivian, about students internationally coming to China. Do we have any figures on what it cost, a cost of a degree for an international student in China? Can we figure that out? Maybe have a quick look and see what it would cost to enroll in a university in China. I know housing is much cheaper here in China than it is in North America. Try to get a room in Boston at prime season, or even London, AJ. I mean,
Sure.
the
Sure.
cost of education must be, what would it cost for Cambridge? How much would that
Oh
cost?
yeah, with Cambridge, you need a minimum 100,000. I think depends on the degree as well, but yeah, you're looking at 100,000 to 200,000, just minimum figure. And this is pounds, by the way. I'm not using
Yeah.
dollars, but yeah, yes, it's crazy. And you talk about empty houses in London. Did you know that over 40% of the apartments are empty? 40%. And this is
Wow.
basically bought up by oligarchs and rich people around the world, because London is actually a kind of a money laundering capital of the world. They've just left the EU, so they don't have to follow any regulations. So people are buying up houses, and ordinary people can't afford it. So you have all of these oligarchs and rich people around the world buying up apartments, and really expensive ones, and they're just leaving it empty. 40% of them are empty at the moment,
That's
because they know,
insanity.
yeah, they know London prices will always go up, so they can just leave it empty and not do anything. And that's the difference between China and the UK. At least in China, the people who buy these properties are families who looking at long-term investment. They're looking at handing over to their children. But in UK, these are owned by oligarchs. These are owned by foreign people.
Mm.
This is people money laundering. You have the president of Pakistan, who owns about 12 properties in London. You have Zelensky owning about 2 or 3 properties in London. These are all sitting empty, all of these oligarchs as well. So that's the difference really. And there is a huge bubble waiting to be burst in UK. And there's never enough affordable housing for the ordinary people. Everything, all the apartments they build, new ones, they just priced out of the market. So the people who buy it are normally Saudis, Russians, even Chinese are buying properties all over London, because you know it- it's just out of control at the moment, and it's just ordinary people just can't afford it. And that's the problem. They talk about empty houses in China, but look at the empty properties in London. It's probably the biggest in the world.
Yeah, just going back to Alex's question about the how much you need to pay for the education here in China as an international student, and I find out that there are a lot of like scholarships. So you basically, if the university, and there's a lot of exchange programs as well. Like, so say if you attend university in your home country, but it has like kind of like an exchange relationship with like Chinese universities, so you can pay the tuition at your school and then going to China, like just basically for free. So basically, you can just cover your daily expenses, and then there will be like nice apartments offered. And there was one time that I got to know a group of international students from Southwest University here in Chongqing, and they were like programs for them to attend, basically to kind of like having this cultural learning between international students and Chinese students. So basically they share like skills, and they exchange ideas together for some of like really like cultural related programs. So I feel like for some of students I interviewed, I feel like they were pretty happy like staying here in Chongqing, and some of them were excited and saying that like having like study in Chongqing is way more better than like actually accepting the some of the education here, and also knowing that there are some more like learning opportunities, and also multicultural learning opportunities here was much better than their even like home country. So I think yes, having to hear something like that, I think like it's kind of like the evidence saying that there are indeed some international students who are really willing to actually having this chance to stay here in China and for a further education learning.
There was a question earlier asking if there's any English programs available at the universities here. Do we know any information on that? That's an interesting question. Well, we look for that. If you can help us out with that, Vivian. I'm going to
Sure.
address a question here on the screen saying that if Canada, if you leave the property empty, you don't need to pay tax. Unfortunately, that used to be the rule as of about 3 years ago, but now the taxes for empty houses in Vancouver is as much as 1 to 2, even 3% of the value of the home annually. And
Wow, that's a lot.
that's how much they're really wanting to cool that market down. But then once again, when you start to see government interference like that, yes, I understand. I used to live in Vancouver. I used to live in downtown Vancouver. I bought properties down there, and I knew living in that area, it was very costly from a property tax standpoint. And property taxes, massively, when you think that you actually own the home, you actually don't own the home. Try not paying your property taxes 1 year and seeing how long your house stays in your name. It's going to be gone.
Yep.
But to press that point more, and that really plays a big part of education here. When you think of the housing in these places like London, housing in Vancouver, housing in New York, if you can't afford to live in these neighborhoods, then you're pushed out a bit, okay? And I kind of understand the point where, I still believe that you can get a good education anywhere. Okay. And I understand that there's some of these prestige universities in the United States that you pay a lot of money, or you hope and you wish that you get into. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to what position, once you're out of university, and what you do with those academics is really the most important thing. And if we look at history here, and this all
Yep.
plays a part on this conversation here, look at the burden of the student debt in the United States of America, what it has done to the youth over the last 20 years. It got so bad that the administration had to go in there. They tried to make an attempt for a student loan forgiveness, but it's broken. It's busted. It's not to be repaired.
Yep.
What's more alarming
Yes.
is there should be money going towards to help subsidize, but let's call it for what it is. It's a business in the United States. It's a business in the part where Asians are being charged double. They are. They've
Yep.
come out and said it.
Yep.
Well, if the domestic person pays 50, but we prefer to get an international student, it's 100 grand. AJ, over to you.
Yeah, that's right. They have been scamming the Chinese students for years. I mean, it's not double in UK. It's probably more like 5 or 10 times the amount. And when they lose 50,000 students from the UK universities, the UK universities will have to make up those numbers. And way they make it up, they increase they increase the tuition rates for everybody else. So the ordinary citizens will have to pay more. I mean, I have a friend who lives two doors away, and he studied aeronautical engineering in
Mm.
a very prestigious London school. And he finished his degree 10 years ago. Still to this day, he hasn't found a job because the aeronautics industry is pretty much dead in the UK now, and he hasn't found a job, and
That's costly. I
hundred
think we
and
might
twenty
out. Yep.
thousand pounds in debt, basically.
I mean, that's life changing. I don't care who you are. That is absolutely life changing money. And
He, and he, he told me he does not want to work because in the contract it says that if you start working and you earn 21,000 per year, then you have to start paying the student fees. So he said he's happy not to work. Said he's happy just getting the basically very small jobs where he gets 16,000 or 18,000 pounds, and he's happy with that. As soon as he goes over 21,000, he'll have to pay the student loan, and he said he can't afford it because he's 120,000 in debt. This is one guy who spent about 8 years studying aeronautics engineering. You know, he still hasn't found any aeronautics jobs, by the way, and it's really, the system is absolutely broken, Alex, absolutely broken. And imagine how these universities must be feeling when their main source of income, Chinese students, are not coming in. So they must be
yeah.
really, really worried because how are these universities going to be kept afloat? You know, and I know what they're going to do. They're just going to increase the tuition fees for everybody else, and people are just not going to be able to afford it. And the universities will suffer, and they will have, some of them will have to get bailouts from the government. Uh, but yeah, I think things are looking really, really bad at the moment, especially in the US and the UK universities. And I think the Chinese universities, they are definitely improving. And you got to also look at the geopolitics around the world, Alex and Vivian. For example, I know for a fact that Iranian students, they teach Chinese at school in Iran. They teach Chinese as a second language. They used to teach English as a second language. They've cancelled that. Now they teach Chinese as a
Mm.
second language in school. I know
Mm-hmm.
for a fact, I have a lot of Iranian friends. I know a lot of Iranians are actually going to China to study universities and stuff. They've given up on the West now because they've had enough. And not only Iran, but you go all of these Central Asian countries, people from Pakistan, people from obviously Kazakhstan, and all of these Central Asian countries. And then don't forget Russia. Russian students
Mm.
are not going to go to the West to study and go to universities. They're going to come to China to study. Then they've pretty much given up on the West. So you have a real multipolar world starting, not only in the economic sense, but also in the educational sense as well. You know, there's Chinese being taught in schools in major countries around the world, and a lot of people, especially in Africa as well, they're also coming into China. So China's everyone wants to learn Chinese now because they know the Chinese economy is going to eventually become the number one economy in the world. If you were a student, it becomes clever to actually go to China, learn China, uh, and um, and live there, learn the language, learn the culture. You will have a real big advantage in the world when China becomes the number one country, number one economy. You have a very good advantage compared to everyone else. So I think the geopolitics is also pushing a lot of students to come to China now. I think probably half the population of the world now.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're onto something, and I also really want to cover the importance about that way of thinking. If you are a Chinese or an international student, and you're looking at the world economies, and you're looking at how your governments are behaving in this in this, like I guess, atmosphere of global cancelization of countries. Let's shift over to Russia. And you made an interesting point. Did you see the move that the foreign ministry made in Russia yesterday, talking about e-visas? They went from a 70 electronic visa that used to be very difficult to get a visa to Russia. Used to take quite a bit of time, a lot of paperwork, a lot of process, and then when you got it, it took a week or whatever. But the Russians yesterday scrapped that completely, and they went to an e-visa format. And this e-visa, they're gearing up. They're gearing up, and they basically invited 52 countries, made it very clear on what countries. Number one was China. Now, think about it. Russia's opening its doors, making it very easy for Chinese people, students, families, whoever. Maybe they want to enjoy the nature. Maybe they want to check out Moscow, St. Petersburg. I don't know. They've made it simple. They've reduced the price. And basically, they have now opened their doors to another brand new, massive market. And they even said to the Europeans, even though the discriminating European Union racist countries who block Russians from citizens from even coming into the country by canceling the Schengen visa and making it extremely difficult and basically canceling everything else Russian. Russia was the bigger man in this one, and basically said, okay, we're going to allow Europeans to come in here. Very easy. So that's crazy. And then Turkey, get this, where the Russians used to go was Turkey. They always would go to Turkey or Egypt or whatever, these countries, because there was a very simple way to get down to Turkey. I don't even think you needed a visa. Well, Turkey yesterday said, guess what, guys? We'll still let you in the country, but we can't use your bank cards that you use in your country because we've been told by the Americans that if we do, we'll be sanctioned. So Turkey threw in the towel yesterday as well. And Russia basically says, okay, if this is how you guys are going to play it, we will definitely decouple from these regions. We will still allow other citizens to come into our country. And matter of fact, we'll make it so super easy and so nice, even though you discriminate the 140 million Russians. Pretty disturbing. That changes people's lives when you think about it. And that also opens an opportunity to bring Russian students into China in a big way.
Yeah.
If you're Russian, you don't want to be landing in the European Union shores to go to university. Absolutely not. First, you might not even be able to pay for tuition because you can't make a wire transfer. Second is you probably can't get a visa. And third, well, you just know how those nations might treat Russian nationals right now. So forget it. So Europe's out. AJ, you want to say something? I can feel it. Go for it, man.
No, I was going to say there is a huge market of Russian students waiting to come to China or actually coming to China because I live in London, and Russians are really well traveled around the world. I think they probably come third in the world of the most traveled students who kind of study internationally and live abroad. Obviously, China comes first, India comes second, but I think there is a huge market. And imagine 100% of these Russian students going into China or Asian countries to study and not bothering about the West anymore. And then you have a huge number of Pakistanis, Iranians, Central Asians, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. They also kind of come into China. Then you also got Asia as well. You got Laos, you have Cambodia, you have Thailand, Malaysia, and it's a win-win situation where you have a trade deal with South Asian countries, which is RCEP. You have a Belt and Road linking all of these countries, and these countries are getting richer and richer. For example, Vietnam is getting richer, Malaysia is getting richer, Laos is getting richer, Cambodia is getting richer. And as these countries get richer, there'll be more students with money coming to China to study. So things are just, the future looks really, really good, not just for China, for Asia. It really is moving into a multipolar world, Alex and Vivian. And I think this is why I think it's really important to make sure your education becomes number one priority in China. Make sure universities are well funded, and they expand as much as possible to allow as many people in as possible, not just from outside, but also domestically as well. I think a lot of universities are doing that right now. I think I've seen some I've seen some figures a couple of months ago how every single university in China is expanding. They're buying all this new land, and they're buying they they- they're opening new facilities and stuff. They're spending a lot of money over the last few years. I've seen. I think they've tripled or quadrupled their budget, especially in the last 2 years alone. So yeah, I think that they're spending a lot. I think it'll be good for China. It'll bear very good fruit, not just for Chinese people, but for international students as well.
And not only about universities themselves, but also, as I said, like vocational colleges are also like another way for like international students, even like for to think about like how there has been a largely focusing courses on on like enrich people's practical skills. So take Chongqing as an example. Actually, everybody knows that as a crucial city in manufacturing, Chongqing saw an increasing demand for the manufacturing sector's employment, and with 1.15 million people last year. So, and also over the past 3 years, there were like over 600 new majors that have been added into Chongqing's vocational colleges, and some of them including like cloud computing, industrial robots, and like modern service industries, and also some of the colleges have established the really close cooperative relationships with more than thousands of companies. So which means that when you graduate from a vocational college, there is a job guaranteed for you. Having the lessons learned and to apply into the real world. I think that's something that a lot of students look for, and also for the whole industry looks for. And I have a really interesting topic I would like to show to you guys. Everybody
Sure.
know that Taobao, right? So Taobao
Yep.
is something like for those of people who do not familiar with, it's kind of like a cheaper version of eBay, I would say. So basically, you can do a lot of things. You can buy things you want, from grocery shopping experiences to like purchasing medical medicines, even like also buying like consumer goods, etc. So Taobao actually has a university here, actually has already officially settled down in Chongqing in 2020. So a lot of people don't know that this university particularly trained the Taobao sellers and to cultivate them into like super influencers. So basically they offer like live stream courses, and everybody knows that live stream is kind of like super popular here in China, also in Chongqing, and like in order and live stream to promote goods is also very popular in China. So, and in fact, live stream has gained prominence in recent years as a viable way to market, to communicate, and to sell products online. So for me, sometimes like I even buy things on Douyin online. So though there are a lot of live streamers who sell things online, and they have really like thorough introduction about their commodities, and and you can ask questions, just like what we are doing in live stream right now. So you can ask questions online, and consult for like specific details of that like specific commodity. So I think that's something that really interesting. So having a university, attending a university like Taobao for e-commerce, I'm sure that they will train like a group of influencers who have ability to introduce and to sell, to really sell products. So it's something like just would like to mention. So how do you guys think about hearing something like a Taobao University, and it was actually settled down in Chongqing in 2020, and it has already trained so far 4.66 million Taobao sellers. And Li Jiaqi, one of the really super famous influencers here in China, actually was coming from that school also.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think
think basically, yeah,
it's a huge
yeah, go
market.
for
I
it,
mean,
AJ.
you got 1.4 billion people in China, and it's a huge market to be so to have like a social influence. Um, to have that social influence experience and knowledge. I mean, I know I follow a few Chinese people who kind of friends of friends on social media myself, like on Instagram and stuff. And I feel that the Chinese students who come to UK from abroad, they have a very good business sense. They're very good at social media, and in their social media, in Instagram, for example, if you click on their profile, it takes you to a Weibo page, and that Weibo page takes you to another page where they're buying and selling goods. And they're already like buying and selling, exporting, importing stuff from China to London. And I feel like they have a very good business sense when they come here. They're a very good advantage when compared to Western students. Western students don't think of things as a business sense. They just when they go to university, they just want to have fun, and they just want to study. They don't want to think about the business. But what I found with Chinese students, they come here, they want to study, they want to work hard, but they also want to try and make money as well. They think of it as a business as well, and all of their social media, Instagram stuff that is either pointing to all the page that you mentioned, the Chinese eBay. They also pointing to their own Weibo page and other pages as well. I think that that's the difference between Chinese and Western. I think it's the way Chinese kids are brought up by their parents. They make sure not only do they study hard, but they also have that business mind and business sense as well to try and make money, however and whenever they can. And with 1.4 billion people, you have a huge market there, and I think it's a very good advantage for anyone with the business sense. You can make money out of anything really. And yeah, and obviously social media, a lot of people are getting rich out of it in China. Over to you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are ways to have a balance and finding the right solution for that. I mean, it's all connected. It's all connected. We talked about real estate prices, connected. We talked about tuition fees, connected. We talked about student loans, connected. All of this stuff and all this commerce connected, and it's going to really get serious tonight when the Fed again raises interest rates anywhere from 3 basis points to 4 basis points. That
Yeah.
I'm getting a little bit concerned here. And the reason for that is when you start to see these interest rates go, people would say, and we have lots of people even in the chat here saying, well, I can't wait for the real estate market to go in half, or I would love to see the real estate market drop 20 to 30%. I've seen that. I've lived through that. And when that real estate market drops that 20 and 30%, and those people that are saying, if this market only dropped 20%, I would be a buyer. I saw that happen in the bubble here in the crisis in 2007-8. And Peter Schiff also called it as well. He was one of the only financial advisors screaming to Wall Street that the housing market's going to come unglued. It certainly did. You could not only get houses 20% off, you could get them 50% or even 55% off. The problem with that is nobody had a job to buy one. No one had credit to buy these homes,
Yep.
except, of course, big conglomerates, huge, massive, deep-pocketed investors. The moment that we start wishing a housing market is going to sell off 20 to 25%, I want the audience to keep in mind a few things. If you're from the collective West, a lot of your equity is in these homes. A lot of your businesses that are taking, we'll call it bridge loans or lines of credit out, are out on these properties as assets. If these assets deflate, the housing market goes into a free fall. The financial global markets follow that. The interest rates go screaming through the roof, and you are in a situation like people are in Turkey with massive inflation. They can't get control of it. And that's the big worrying point here is the Fed thinks that they can calm the inflation down in the US that is growing. They're claiming only 8%, but I think it's closer to 18 to 20%. Let's be honest here. This affects everybody. If you're gassing up your car, you're affected. If you're paying property taxes, you're affected. Your taxes are being higher. If you're paying energy bills, gas, electricity, you're affected. You're affected everywhere. If you're a importer in the United Kingdom right now, the British pound has been hammered. The euro has been hammered. I mean, most currencies have been hammered against, funny enough, the US dollar, because everybody runs to that. But the moment that the Americans lose control of their currency, then we're in for one hell of a ride here. I
Yep.
don't know where this is going to fall. I just know that tonight, when they announce this, the rates people are going to be going in, either they're about to buy a house or they're about to sell a house, they're about to renegotiate their mortgages. That extra 3/4 or 1% bump in mortgage prices is all it's going to take for things to crumble. And even housing starts have hit rock bottom. New housing starts. Most of the new housing starts are in apartments because people stop building houses. And why would you want to build
Yep.
houses when the price of goods is skyrocketing? You know, they're not, houses aren't going up and appreciating because, wow, it's a great location. No. I mean, the price of plywood, the price of wood, nails, equipment. If you can get a refrigerator in the United States, you're lucky because the shortage of chips. It's a combination and a colossal combination that I think, as I told you guys last week, I predicted that this market was going to sell off. Well, it certainly did. And it continued to sell off. Now, we might not see too big of a sell off in the US markets. Today, what we normally see is the opposite of what you might think of this market. The market might rally, and this is crazy, AJ. The market might rally on interest rates going up. Does that make
Yep.
sense to anyone?
No, it
Does it
doesn't.
make
But
sense?
it's all speculation. The market is speculation. It's none of it is real tangible assets or anything. It's all based on speculation, and it's all controlled by the government. Um, they can pretty much control the market if it goes up or down. When they lose control, that's the problem. So the problem with increasing interest rates is it becomes a domino effect. So what
Mm-hmm.
happens is your property, say you bought a property last year worth 200,000, suddenly you have to pay really high mortgage rates on top of your high gas bills, electricity bills, cost of living. A lot of people will not be able to afford it. A lot of people will lose their homes because the interest rates are too high, and then suddenly people will start losing their homes, and it becomes a domino effect, and house prices start going down, and people that have bought property for 200 suddenly will realize their property is going down by to 180, 160, 150. So you are basically paying a mortgage for $200,000 house, and your house is only worth 150. Imagine how
Net
people
equity.
will. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
People will start panicking. The markets will panic, and a lot of these homes are also owned by developers. A lot of these homes are owned by businesses. A lot of them will go into foreclosure, and it becomes a domino effect. And the difference between now and 2008, 2008, people you know, were basically the house prices were quite low 2008 compared to what it is now. Now they are like almost twice as much. The interest rates are really really high as well, and the salaries have not gone up since 2000. The salaries have pretty much the same. So you are in a worse situation now, and people just don't have the money to bail themselves out if they get into any trouble, especially after COVID. A lot of people have lost their savings. So if they get into trouble, if they can't pay their mortgages for a couple of months, then that's it. They lose their home. The banks take it. And the problem with when the banks take it, they cannot sell it at a profit. They have to sell it at a discount. And this causes a bigger domino effect. The market starts crashing because it's just one thing after another, and then you have the Lehman Brothers moment as well, and because their markets is all down to speculation, and once this domino starts going, then you'll see the whole house of cards just starting to topple, and it's going to be even a worse a crash than 2008. I probably estimate. I think it's going to start with the United States, and it's going to trickle down to the rest of the world. The world's the countries which depend on the dollar, countries like the US, the EU, they will uh, hit even worse. But the
You,
countries
you
which
know,
don't depend much on the dollar, like Russia, for example, they're not going to be impacted, because they are completely um, cut off from that system. So I think that they'll be quite safe. China will be quite safe as well. But I think those countries which are depending on the dollar will be severely impacted. Over to
yeah, I
you,
think
Alex.
yeah. Sorry about that, AJ. It's one
Yeah.
thing to make predictions in these markets. Um, I've been trading for quite a while, probably about 25 years. Um, I don't look at these markets in a crystal ball. I make my opinions on basing on the momentum of this market. Next week, this market could be up 10%. I don't know. It could be down 10%, but I'm rating it on let's look at the geopolitical climate out there right now. What is the good news that's going to be the catalyst to this market? And we're not even talking about the financial markets or anything like that, but let's just talk the average Joe trader that wants to open a store or a coffee shop or maybe a little strip mall in a they call them strip malls where all these little stores in America you get 5-10 stores,
Yep.
they're not big shopping malls, but let's say that the average person wants to invest in a business, not necessarily the financial markets or nothing like that. Well, what is he facing right now? If you let's look at an example here. You want to open up a shop, okay, some shop. Now you're facing taxes immediately. You're facing a supply chain issue that's still out there years into this. So you're not sure if you're going to be able to get those goods at a consistent price, whether it's 3 months out, 6 months out, whether it's importing coffee. I mean, if you're importing coffee or something from Russia, you're in trouble. Or something like that. Depends where the geopolitical pendulum swings. So you've got a real difficult path to success. Think about it. Staffing is an issue. I would have never thought staffing would be an issue in a global market that was basically for closed for 2 years and pretty much everybody got either fired or laid off or lost their job or their business. But staffing is an issue. Logistical lines are an issue. Currencies are an issue. You might have been able to import it for, let's say, 5 bags of coffee for £10. Well, now it's costing you £15 for that 5 bags of coffee because inflation or devalue of currency. And then when that coffee comes in, maybe your customer base is gone because restrictions or, whatever. So it's a real risky time to start any business venture when you think about it.
Right.
That's kind of where I
Exactly.
want to go with that.
And if you look at California, for example, so many businesses are leaving California, and they have figures saying that over 1 million people have left California this past year. And in terms of businesses, over I think over 100,000 businesses have left California as well. It's just high taxes, the cost of living. Businesses can't sustain that. It's almost impossible, especially with the Californians' tax rates. But if you compare that to opening up a business in China, for example, and what benefits you get from that, everything is cheap. The taxes are low. Obviously, employment is low. The cost of buying a property and everything is low. Um, and plus you have access to the supply chains, access to the raw materials. It's such a huge difference, and that's the difference between the developed world and the developing world. The developed world, I think, it has gone as much as it can go. They're saying this is the final stage in capitalism, and it's all downhill from here. Capitalism comes in stages, and it's come to a point now where the rich has gone so rich and the poor have gone so poor. The system is completely broken now, and there is just no way to fix it. All they're doing is putting plaster on bits here, bits there, but it's just downhill from there, Alex. I mean, there is no more capitalism in the West. The costs have gone too high. Everything is just, the inflation has gone too high. I just don't think they can get away from this apart from having a huge bust.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty wild where this market is going to go. Let's go back to Vivian for a moment. Vivian, greatly appreciate you coming on the program tonight. How are we with your topics tonight? Have we covered most of the stuff? I mean, you always come very well prepared. So, do we have some more topics that you would like to cover on the program?
So because I was like one of my major focus to share will be like education, like how, as I said, how China has been transforming its education to serve for its industrial economy. But I was also going to talk about like because September is a month that all students start their schools, and they were like and there was just a really little things like for students' performance to be evaluated into like a multi-dimensional approach, which they add like labor courses for new semester for those primary school kids. But there was like just something like a piece of information to share, like how not only like how China has been focusing on the changes of education in the secondary educations, but also like for some primary school, like how it has been making efforts to teach students how some of the labor courses, like taking cooking as example, like students in the first and second grades were encouraged to take on some basic tasks such as like washing and preparing vegetables, and then they were like making dumplings and everything. So I was like, I think this kind of approach like appeals to me right away, because like I'm a Chinese to myself, so I kind of like witnessed the whole education changes like throughout the years. So like having to say some of those little things, like little changes, I really think that like the education is changes like from really like earlier age into like senior levels. So yeah, so I think that's something I would like to, like my observation I would like to share to you guys. Yep. And I think that's good for me for now.
I mean, how is it? Tell us, what is the experience like as a student? Do you've studied as well internationally? So let's talk about maybe the hours of the schools. Are they different? Is the course loads a lot heavier? Is the price of tuition extremely expensive abroad than it is locally? What's your suggestion? Should Chinese students look more, or should they focus more on saying, wait a minute, maybe if I get an education here in China, save myself $100,000 for my family, that's not a bad idea. I know I've hit you with a lot of questions there, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you have that experience, and normally I would be asking, hey, what's it like to study in China? But now you've been to Canada, right? That's correct. You studied in Canada, and you
Yeah.
studied here in China. Tell us what is maybe a cultural difference, what maybe even the course load difference. Maybe you can share your experience with us a little bit more.
So in general, I think Chinese students have this stereotype that are known for their diligence and perseverance. So they are always like defined as a group of people who are working really hard in order to achieve a goal. So I think just having mention that those like changes in educations, even like in primary schools, I think that's something like China has been doing now to make the school courses are more diverse. Like instead of like only focusing on like those, like science subjects, but like also to having students to practice in their learning skills like in doing things like as I said, like they are starting to cooking things, like they now starting to learn cooking and to learn like simple things like for just for their own benefits. And it says that grade 5 and 6 can learn to cook 2 or 3 meals, and such as like a home style dish of scrambled eggs with tomatoes or something like that. So I think this is something like I think that's China wants to go for the future is to have that like this education into an all-round development instead of like only focusing on 1 or 2 areas, but having students to grow into this all round like students like and also and that can serve for the job market in a more efficient way. And I think compare with what I because so for most of my areas like for most of my years in high schools, I was in China, and then for my university education I was in Canada. So I think the main differences between the two education systems are mainly like for the Canadian universities, they teach you how to think like and there are a lot of like things relates to the critical thinking skills, like helping you to practice your presentation skills, or even like how to present yourself. But I think for Chinese lessons it's more like having this like inner growth, like you have to always be modest and learning, and also like having all subjects in learning, it might be useful for you in the future to apply that into a job industry or something. So I think depends on different people as well. Like for me, I think this combination works for me pretty well, and I feel like so far not only about the primary school or even like as I said like secondary school, I think China is making efforts to updates its educational system, and like having this prepared for the future job market. Back to you, Alex.
Well, I think, that is an interesting way of actually looking at it, but I'm going to ask you some more questions if you don't mind, Vivian. I mean, let's ask it from a standpoint where you went over to Canada. How were you welcomed when you went to Canada? Any problems? Any issues going to school there? Was the Canadians welcome? Was there any people, oh, you're from China, you're in it, there are these issues that we sometimes don't want to bring up, but they're there. They're very real that they're there. Did at any time, at any part, because where I'm going with this is that I've been in China for a year here now, but I've been coming to China for 25 years. Since 2003, so 22 years, sorry. 19 years. Okay, 19 years, 25 cities. But I want to bring up a point is that I feel relatively safe here. I go out. I'm never really concerned about my safety. Now, I wouldn't be concerned at all if my nieces or nephews came over to China and studied in every city that they wanted to. I would think, amazing, that would be cool, that would be great. But now we are in a very different environment in some of these other parts of the world where being a Chinese student right now, AJ, you know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I
so I mean,
mean,
I've told you about my friend, he who was Chinese, and he got beaten up, and he got put into a coma. This was during COVID times, and so obviously it happens in UK, but it doesn't happen as much as United States. And in the United States, you hear so many stories about women getting pushed in front of trains, and Chinese women, and Chinese people being killed, and it's really really bad in probably places like California, but it happens all over the world. It happens in Australia as well. um, but yeah, we're living in different times, and I think things were fine before Trump came along. I think when Trump came along and he started this real racist rhetoric towards the Chinese people, blaming the Chinese for the uh, for the coup, and also being racist about it, calling it Wuhan virus and Kung flu. And I think that started it all. And I think people in the West, they're very easily manipulated by the West, and stuff like that. The media as well has got a lot to do with it. But I mean, talking about in a general point of view, Alex, I think nowadays degrees, unless you do a specialist degree like medicine or something like that, a lot of the degrees that are out in Western countries, they're pretty much useless. I mean, you have like thousands and thousands of degrees people are doing, and a lot of them are is not going to really get you anywhere in life. And if you're doing something like um, social studies, or something like that, a lot of people do that in UK, and it's just, you're not going to get really a good job out of it. I think that's the difference between I think probably China and the UK or United States, for example. I think a lot of kids that are grown up in the West, they tend to do really useless degrees. They're not really pushed by their parents to do technical degrees like either medicine or engineering or something like that, but they're just doing whatever they feel like. They do art or things, stuff that's not really going to get you far in life. But I think the difference between Chinese students, the parents really push the Chinese students to do technical degrees, the things that will be really useful for them. I think that's the difference. And I think if you're doing a useless degree, Alex, especially in the West, and you spend so much money going into debt, I mean, there is really is not really worth it, really, to do that degree. I mean, you're going to come out with a degree, but are you going to really get a good job? Not really. I mean, doing journalism in UK, for example, I mean, what are you going to get from it? I mean, you're going to end up working for the Mirror, and then you're going to end up writing stuff that the editor tells you to write. You have no freedom. you know it's just there's a lot of useless stuff that goes on in the West. I think there's a lot of useless degrees, and this is one of the reasons why the West is going downwards, because not enough students are doing the technical stuff which will bring up the country, which will bring up the industrial productions, which will bring up those inventors, and those people that come up with really amazing ideas and innovate. There's not enough people doing that. I think there's too many people who are just doing these useless stuff, useless degrees,
what,
and the
what's
parents are not
what's
pushing
going to
them.
change that, AJ? What's going to change that?
I, I seem to think that China has an advantage. I think there's a generation of Chinese people which are which is part of the one child policy. And when you have one child as a parent, you basically have all your focus on that child. So you obviously give them everything they need for a good education, for a good life, and you can focus on that child. But I think in UK, there's a lot of poor people in UK who have kids, and they can't look after them. They kind of they can't focus on them because they have too many. They can't look after them because they're not making enough money. They have to work. Um, it's a different culture, Alex, in China and UK. I mean, in China, for example, if you have children, your grandparents will look after them while you go to work. But in UK, it's not like that. UK, the family unit is not as strong as you have in China. So you don't have grandparents looking after your kids. So everybody is busy because it's different here. You have to work like a slave to pay your mortgage, to make ends meet. So this means if you have like 2 or 3 kids, you can't look after, you can't focus on them. You can't tell them what to, you can't, you can't mold them. You can't tell them to do this degree, do that degree. You can't push them to be successful because you have no time. You're too busy working. You're too busy making ends meet. And I think that's a generational issue, and I think it's also a cultural, social issue as well. I think China, there is definitely a generation where there's one child. It is good for that one child because that means 100% of the focus goes on that one child, and that child can go out, be whoever they want to be. They can study wherever they want to study. If you have like 2 or 3 kids, it's a lot more difficult to send them all to university because you don't have that. It's quite difficult. But I think this one child policy has really helped China to really become rich over the last 20 or 30 years because it's a really good idea. I mean, now I think
It's
they
relaxed
did the
now,
right.
though.
It's relaxed
Yeah.
now. I think now they've done the right thing. Now they've relaxed it, and I think they've relaxed it at the right time. And I think uh, it's good. But I think having too many kids is a social thing as well in UK. I think in UK, people have forgotten how to push their kids to be successful. I think in UK, things are very relaxed. You can be whoever you want to be. I think the people in the West are probably too arrogant now. They feel that they are the best. They don't need to push themselves anymore. Once you get to the top um, of civilization, you get very lazy. Your parents get lazy. You think, oh, we made it now. There's no point pushing our kids anymore. Let them do whatever they want to do, and this is what happens. The social system's close to collapse. Kids are doing drugs. Kids are doing all sorts. Kids are not studying. Kids are getting lazy,
I
and,
mean,
and and that's the problem, really.
Vivian must have seen the difference of the schools. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
have interns that come into our office here, and they work. And it was interesting. You can hear the chatter, and I said, curious. I said, they all lived on the university, and I said, is there parties? Is there, things like this? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, what? I mean, I said, is there fraternities and stuff like that? You know what I'm talking about, right, guys? Fraternities, like
Yeah,
AJ? Yeah, I
fraternities. Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
so none of that stuff is really, to my understanding, really important in China. Getting a damn good education is. And that is the major difference, I think, what I have my understanding about university here. I mean, we have a nice comment here from Leo. He said, I sent my son something about medical school in Guangzhou, saved himself a fortune in fees. He's graduated 4 years ago, is working at the NHS hospital in Manchester. He even received a scholar. I mean, that is great stuff to see. But, it's once again, it's the difference in education is also says a lot about the culture. I've been raised that when I went to school, get to school, I'm paying for it. I'm paying for it myself. And it taught me to be responsible. I didn't really have time to go out and do all these parties. But now it seems to be that maybe, I'll give you an example. My sister has saved up for 15 to 20 years of her working life just to now put her first daughter through school here. And I just spoke to her about 2 weeks ago, and she said, "Yeah, I might have to tack on an extra 1 or 2 years of work because they've moved up the tuition fees another 15 to 20%. That wasn't taken in the calculation. And if I have to borrow the money, well, here you go again. I mean, here's parents retiring at 67 just because they want to put their kids in college." Vivian, does that happen here?
I don't
What
think so. I don't.
quickly walk me through the process of someone that's about to enter university. What marks they need, what financial do they need, or do they need much financial, or is that provided by whether it's the state or the government, or and if you're getting a 4-year degree here in China, what are your prospects? So let's go through it quickly. What do you need to get in? What's it going to cost? And what are your prospects? Basic, just a degree in education or something like that. What?
I think just for domestic students like attending a Chinese university here, most of like for their fee and everything, and also like including their daily expenses, I think those can be really easily covered. And most of them are covered by their parents, but it's basically like small amount of. It's not like a huge amount of thing like you cannot afford. And that's for domestic students, and not to mention about there are some international students, as I said, like they go for a scholarship and everything. Like, so basically, I don't think there's much you need to worry about to attend a university in China as a domestic student. But if you're like me, I'm pretty fortunate because my parents has been putting like a great emphasis on my education since I'm a kid. So I'm pretty fortunate. So I got this opportunity to, as Alex said, like to go into study abroad. And we also pay like double, like double tuition fee.
Unbelievable, huh?
Yes, and I think a lot of people know that because like there are a lot of expenses if you're in a foreign country, so you have to also think about like how to cook for yourself instead of like going out for dinner like every day. So I think just some little things for people to take a notice. So I think indeed, I think there is still like a trend for more international students to be invited in China, like in Chinese universities, and even like when I was in Hong Kong, like when I was in University of Hong Kong, there is a huge amount of like Korean students, and also like some other Asian countries, like Singapore students, Malaysia students. There were like huge amount of like international population in that areas. So you can say that like a lot of people are choosing mainland students as well as like University in Hong Kong for their further education. And there are also like a lot of great expertise in like professors as well, like a huge diverse of professors, and some of them coming from like like also Europe, and some of them coming from North America, and some of them coming from even Africa. So I think there's also like this kind of like a huge diverse expertise in professions in terms of the teachers and professors.
Can I just also add
Please.
that I heard that Uyghurs, and if you're a minority in China, or if you're not a Han Chinese, you get more of a privilege to go into university. You get more
Yes,
points or something.
you got
Can you explain that?
yes. Like as far as
Because
I know that, 'cause, I think you guys familiar with Gaokao, right? It's kind of like a national test for
Yes.
all students, for all Chinese students in order to get into a university. So if you're minority, there's like a like a special bonus point if you are a minority. So I think that also shows that how Chinese people have been taking care of the minorities, and also having this like diverse cultures in ethics.
Yeah, this is
Yep.
the stuff that West don't teach the kids in the West. You know,
Exactly.
they say the Uyghurs are being repressed and stuff, but if you're a Uyghur child, you have such an advantage. You have, so many bonus points, and you can go to, top universities in China. A lot of the Han Chinese students will kill for that. You have such a good, start in life if you're a minority in China. And people in China, they love to throw this genocide thing flying around, but if you actually look at the facts and you look at the truth, you see it right in front of your face. It's not like that. It's actually the opposite. If you're a Uyghur, you actually get more benefits than an ordinary Chinese person.
Yeah, just looking at some notes here, 12 million takers of it. The Chinese National College entrance exam. Vivian, is this pretty stressful
Yep.
time for students when they have to do this?
Yes, of course. But I don't think I got to say about Gaokao because I've never, like for me, I've never attended Gaokao because I was sent to and like kind of like an international school for like it was A level actually. So I think AJ would be familiar with. So I had my A level in my high school, and I know like having the test like that, it's also like challenging. It's definitely like a challenger for considering about huge amount of students who are getting into universities, and they also aim for like higher reputational university in China in order to find a good job.
I mean, it's fascinating, the educational system, and it actually is the backbone of some countries. It's actually helped to bring many companies and pardon me countries out of poverty by educating and helping their citizens learn skills and stuff like that. But it seems like China has definitely got this one, as with many things, they've got this one definitely under control, and they know exactly what they're doing and how to do it, and not to throw millions of their citizens into piles and piles and piles of debt just to let capitalism reign. That's difficult. That would be great. So I think, Vivian, I want to thank you for coming on the program today. It's always a pleasure to get into these conversations with you about education today, and I think we have a lot more coming up in the next few weeks. Maybe you can let our audience know that maybe some of the topics that might be on next week's show, if you got any ideas, or maybe the audience might have some ideas, you guys can throw them out to us, what topics that you guys think are important. And if you don't know about Vivian, she will explain to you her position here at iChongqing and what she does one more time. And if you want to find your work, where do we look for it, Vivian?
So please go direct to the iChongqing's website. So, and we cover like basically, as I said, like a political and economic news. So, all of our news coverage will be under the business section on the iChongqing section, iChongqing's website. And for me, I think I'm always it's a pleasure for me for me to actually get into this live stream chatting room. And I also would like to know some of the ideas from our audience, like what kind of things you might be interested in, or what kind of focus you will be more like inclined to know. Because as I said that we cover a lot of things, so sometimes it will be hard for me to filter the right topic for you. So but like we're trying to have this kind of like a like weekly updates on some of the news happening in Chongqing and also in Western China, or China in general. So we might grab some of the little things, as I said, like education, like can be a one aspect, but we can cover like other things, say like China, like Chongqing's infrastructure, or even like technology, or even like how you would or even like start a investment or something like that. So I think yeah, and that's all for me today. And it's yeah. So Alex, take over.
Well, thanks, Vivian. Audience, stick around because AJ and I have got some stuff we're going to get right into after we say goodbye to Vivian. Always a pleasure, Vivian, to share the panel discussion with you. I always learn. I know the audience always learns everything, and it's quite amazing. You're a person with a wealth of knowledge, and once again, we are blessed to have you with us again today. I know you work very hard in what you do, and the work. I commend you once again for your research on this topic for today, and we will see you next week, Vivian, and AJ and I will take over from here. You have yourself a great evening, Vivian. Take care.
Thanks, Vivian. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, everybody, we have a message for you. And I'm certain that some of you have heard, we're going to switch this over to a little bit more geopolitics here, because AJ and I have been waiting to bring some news to you. AJ, have you heard the latest breaking news from the Russian President Vladimir Putin and his speech today?
I heard he's changing the special military operation or something. And he's given a few warnings to the West. That's as far as I've not caught up with the news as much. Have I missed something or?
Well, I'm not sure if our audience is aware, but I won't say anyone's name yet. But the moment that one of the audience names this individual, I'm going to tell you the message. Who would we rely on mostly? And we won't say it yet, AJ. We'll see if our audience picks this up. But this is to the audience that are following this channel. Who do you rely on for the most accurate information? Of course, with the Russian and Ukraine confrontation, who do you feel is giving you the most accurate information? Is it the collective West and the Western media, who have only been giving us updates from one part of the conflict and not the other part of the conflict, which is in the Luhansk and the Donetsk People's Republic? The moment that somebody mentions the right person where they feel that they get the most accurate information, and there are other channels out there, they are the Duran, who gives some very sophisticated and good updates on that, of course, as well as Brian Berletic from the Real Atlas. He is definitely a guy that puts out some great detailed information on that. But I'm just seeing some of the comments here that are coming in. I only switch on the MSN if I want to laugh. That's very good. Okay, there we go. Here it is, Patrick Lancaster, everybody, and even the Lyra guy. All right, so here's the message that has come from Patrick Lancaster to me today. It's live on my screen about about 2 hours and 20 minutes ago. Just before we started this live stream today. You guys want to prepare yourself for this message, because you know that Patrick is not the type of guy that makes stuff up. He's pretty passionate. If you guys aren't aware who Patrick Lancaster is, he's a crowdfunded freelance journalist who's a very good friend of mine. We've met on a few occasions, even in some relatively unstable parts of the world. We've traveled together, and most recently we traveled to Transnistria, which is a breakaway region on Moldova between Ukraine, which was going to be a fireball of an area here in the next few months, I feel. Well, Patrick married a local girl. He's been in this region since 2014, reporting on it. If you're not aware of him, he has a YouTube channel called Patrick Lancaster. He was shut down for his monetization. He was shut down on Facebook. He was shut down on PayPal. He was shut down on Visa, MasterCard, and most crowdfunding websites, as he wanted to get his message out to the world. Today, we have a message from Patrick that reads the following, sent to me at 5:15 today. Mobilization of Russia has started, and Putin has addressed the country saying that Russia is ready to use all all weapons and any other means of mass destruction in case of a threat to territorial integrity. And this is not a bluff. Hearing those words from Patrick, who is now back in the region, who I will be speaking with tomorrow, and we are going to try to get him live as soon as possible. I have to tell you guys that this is getting, I think, to the breaking point here where this war is either going to, well, pardon me, this conflict, if we want to call it accurately for all media outlets, this conflict is about to shift into another gear. But are we surprised as we're getting close to winter that this is going to get to the really, really serious level? AJ, I mean, we're seeing homeless people all over America, but yet they're
Yep.
trucking billions of dollars of cash over to the Ukraine. When is this going to stop? And is this the final blow where we're going to get to some peace talks? Or what's your thoughts on it? I mean, that's quite the bold comment. Patrick doesn't normally send me these types of comment unless he's very concerned.
I don't think there's going to be any peace talks. From what I heard from the news yesterday, I know that there's a lot of referendums being rushed through um, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk areas. They're going to push through these referendums, and these territories are going to be officially Russian. So when you have Ukrainian forces attacking Russian territory, things will be different. I mean, right now, Ukraine is obviously attacking Donbass and Luhansk, Kherson areas, Kharkiv areas as well. And, Russia can call it a special military operation. But as soon as these areas become Russian, the gloves come off. You're basically attacking Russian territory, and when that happens, then Russia will escalate with any means necessary. I mean, everybody knows that Russia has been fighting Ukraine with one hand tied behind its back. They've been sending
Can I
very
add to that? Can I add to that?
yeah, go on. Yeah, go on.
I think Russia's been fighting the Ukraine slash proxy NATO at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. And also, you have to look at the weapons that Russia has sent. They've sent very cheap weapons like cheap tanks, cheap material. They're fighting with the minimum effort as possible. They haven't sent any, you hardly see any airplanes doing bombing runs. You don't see the latest Su-57 airplanes, for example. You don't see the S-400s. Russia has got a huge arsenal still waiting to come into this war. So they've been pretty much fighting at a very low capacity. So what this means is Russia's going to start bringing up the big guns. I think they've had enough of Ukraine shelling all these nuclear power plants and doing all this counteroffensive and using these HIMARS as well. I think Russia will start to kind of put this conflict to a close. I believe they will push through to Odessa. They will head to Transnistria. They will block off Ukraine's access to the sea. And I think that's going to be, once that happens, then you will see Ukraine start deteriorating. And when you don't have access to the sea, your number one trading route gets blocked off, which means you have less access to funds, less access to weapons. And I can see Ukraine going down from there. And I think Zelensky will have to watch out for the next few months. You've already seen Italy, you've seen Hungary, you've seen countries like Bulgaria changing governments. They're going more towards the pro-Russia side, especially with Italy. You have this new government coming in, which is very pro-Russian. Bulgaria even, and you will see countries in the EU start moving away from EU and going more towards Russia. You've seen what the EU has done to Hungary. They're basically withholding 7.5 billion in funds to Hungary, and things like that will push Hungary out of Europe. It'll push other countries out of Europe as well. And I think Germany is going to be hit really hard over the next few months. And I think
Yeah,
German
yeah.
government will, yeah, I think the German government will be overrun. I mean, I've seen protests in Germany right now, all over Germany, which is not really shown in the media, but there's protests going on in Germany, and there's protests going on because Germany is starting coal power plants, um, and it's really crazy because the German government is a green government, and you have the green government opening up, coal power plants, which is completely against their principles. And now you have all of these people protesting and stopping these coal power plants from starting business. So there's a huge amounts of issues going on. So if they can't start up these coal power plants, where are they going to get the energy from? I think Germany is absolutely screwed, and Schultz better be careful, because I think this is how the fascism started,
Hmm.
um, brought on the Nazis back in the day in the Second World War. This is, it's almost like history is repeating. You've seen a real far right extremist group taking over Italy, and I think the same thing's going to happen in Germany. I think there's going to be a coup. The government's going to be pushed out and I think, yeah, when people start getting cold, when people start getting desperate, you know, that's when things happen. And I think Britain is also in a huge amount of danger as well. This could happen in Britain as well.
AJ, I really think that, let's look at this NATO for a bit. I mean, what they've done to a lot of these countries. I'm surprised that, Duran made a good comment yesterday where he says, where the hypocrisy, why aren't some of these NATO countries on a, no travel list like the Russians are for what they've done in the past? I mean,
Mm,
it makes sense, but I really think how this is going to play out is going to play out very quick. I think Russia's going to come in there. They're going to come in very strong, and it's going to be a bit of a shock to the system. And I think we're going to probably see a reality check here, a quick reality check, one where okay, they've thrown everything at it. They've thrown and I'm talking the collective West and what they've calculated and put together into the 100 billion plus. They've tried. And now Russia could bring out the real artillery and really let it rip and rock and roll down there. And I don't think that they're ready for that. I think that they were honestly thinking that Russia was eventually, there was going to be problems in the country. There was, the country's not going to be able to, Putin's not going to be able to stay in power because this and that. But they got a big problem here. It's changed. The game has changed, and it's changed in a way where look at how serious it's going to get here.
mm,
It could really set off here tomorrow. I mean, if he's following through, which he's done most of the time, I haven't ever seen him go back on his words. When he says he's going to do something, he normally does it. I
yeah.
mean, what a leader should do. And this could really, I don't think the Western countries are ready for this. And this is going to sting and it's going to hurt. And and I hope the Western media are going to finally report what is really, really, really going on there. The casualty count's going to be massive.
Mm. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if, in terms of coincidence, this happened at the back of Putin's meeting with President Xi and also the other leaders in the SCO summit. So he's already planned this. So he's probably sat down with President Xi and said, "Look, this is what I'm planning. This is what I'm going to do, and this is the only way to put this war or this special military operation to an end. If I
Hmm.
leave it as it is, it's just going to drag on for years. But what I'm going to have to do to put this to an end, I'm going to have to put all the big guns in and try and finish this as soon as possible." And I think that's what Putin is doing. And even the Indian Prime Minister Modi said to Putin as well. He says, we need to find an end to this conflict as soon as possible. And Putin said to him, yeah, we're working on ending this as soon as possible. And I think this is probably the message that Putin got from the other SCO members and President Xi as well. Let's end it as soon as possible. Let's not drag it on for years. I think, and I think that's what Putin is doing. He's putting all his big guns in now, and it's going to try and end it now.
Well, I mean, how long can this go? I mean, I guess they could drag it through winter, but we're talking real artillery now. We're talking real artillery. I mean, we're getting serious now. This is the big stuff coming in, and my concern, everybody that's watching this today knows that I keep in good contact with Patrick Lancaster. We do talk about these kind of things. When I start seeing these messages come from him, he's saying that it's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get ugly, and I don't know where. I just think it's the West has just been kind of going on with this, supporting Ukraine, watching their own economies be affected, watching their own people paying astronomical bills. The blame game goes around. Nobody wants to take responsibility. But the SHIT is about to get real here, AJ. And I think when the big guns come on to the playing field here, this is a guy that doesn't hesitate. What are the countries going to say to him about his plans? They've pretty much shut him off for all banking system. All major Fortune 500 companies have left the country. They basically told the residents or the citizens of the country they're not welcome anywhere. What do they expect? So I think he's going to go all in here, and I think he's going to probably in the next 48 hours here make a big impression, or at least wait for these referendums, which were quickly brought forward, which is very interesting. There must have been some communications. Patrick knew about this yesterday. I mean, there's got to be some communication, but I don't think just when you think the Western countries have got your back, watch. There's going to be a lot of them pull out of this and say, "Wait a minute, this isn't for us." Right? Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think am I?
Yeah, you're 100% right. 100% right.
I think the UK and Canada's going to go. This really isn't for us. Let's and they're going to switch. They're going to flip just like they flip on everybody else. They're going to flip on this guy down there in the Ukraine. He's going to be left holding the bag, and guess what? He is going to lose a lot of territory, which he should just sit down, or somebody with half a brain from some of these administrations should sit down with these guys and hammer out a deal. But this fake, what was it, 2 weeks ago, we're taking territory back. It was like they were marching into Moscow. That's how the media was saying it. But it's going to get crazy.
Can I ask you to share this article?
Please. Yep. I just saw it. Let me pull that up.
Put it on. But I mean, the clever thing would be to actually to say to Zelensky, enough is enough. Let's kind of work out a deal with Russia. This is the war you're not going to lose. But however, I just feel that people like Liz Truss, they seem to be doubling down. And
tripling.
This article, tripled down. And this article came out yesterday in which Liz Truss says that the rising energy bills is worth it for Ukrainian support. And this article is basically in every single British paper. And the British public, I can tell you, have had enough. They've already had enough of Liz Truss. They're already fed up of seeing her face. When she says things like this, the energy bills are worth it for Ukrainian support. I mean, this is coming from somebody who has not struggled about paying the bills. She gets a good salary. She probably gets paid by the WEF or the neocons or the military industrial complex as well. And this is somebody who is not struggling in life. But the people who are struggling in Britain, the middle classes, the people who are in poverty, tell that to their face when they're struggling to feed their kids, to keep their kids warm at night. You know, I dare Liz Truss to, sit down with them in their face and say to them, "Oh, don't worry, it's okay for your kids to go hungry. It's okay for your kids to freeze at night, as long as we're supporting Ukraine." Imagine, her saying that to a middle class person.
Well, she
They
is
will.
saying that.
Yeah, she's saying that, but these people who are in poverty or in middle class will literally shout, or even do worse to Liz Truss, probably slap
Yeah.
around a bit and just say, you're talking absolutely bollocks, you're talking nonsense. You know, you can't say that to the British public. You can't just say these bills are worth paying the price for, when the bills have gone up 180%, or they've gone up 200%, and your life is, and why are you supporting Ukraine? What's Ukraine got to do with British people? Why? I mean, there's still not a reason why they're doing this. Their reason is democracy, apparently. Well, look at democracy, how democracy is. Democracy is, y- y- is it really putting food on the table for people who are in poverty? Is it putting food on the table if you're a middle class? No, it's not. This is basically making the rich richer and the poor poorer, and that's what
Mm.
democracy is. It's capitalism. It's making, it's a plutocracy where the rich 1% are getting richer, and everyone else is getting poorer for it. And
It yeah, it's pretty
and
scary.
I
I
just
mean,
I just feel
yep.
that these leaders are just going to double down and triple down on it all until they get kicked out of power. And I think the German government will probably get kicked out first, followed by, Liz Truss will probably be kicked out as well. Same way Boris has gone. Boris has got kicked out because, he's been giving money to Ukraine, and the British economy has tanked. Liz Truss is going along the same route. I just can't believe she hasn't learnt any lessons. She's going to be kicked out very soon as well. I just don't think she will last.
Well, I mean, I think the moment of truth is almost here. I really think the speech today from the Russian president is going to change the dynamics of how these politicians, if they want to stay in power in their own country. B is, that gas is going to be shut off. I mean, really shut off after this. He's going all in. Because when you've starved this nation, you've cut them off, tried to crush all their small businesses, tried to devalue their currency, failed, tried to shut their economy down, failed, tried to beat them with international sanctions, failed. It's failure all over the place. Now, there's a lot of hurt going on. Oh, there's a lot of hurt going on. But I mean, then there's a lot of hurt going on in these Western countries as well. I mean, when some of these power and electricity bills are bigger than some of these people's pensions, I mean, we got a real problem here. But I think he's going all in, AJ, and I think it's in quite a serious note. I think you've seen this, the referendum speed up, and as the Western media will say, well, let's look at this. Wasn't that his intentions to take over that region? Can't the Western media read between the lines? Hint, hint, wink, wink. Referendum's coming. That means they're going to be part of Russian territory. Hello, he's putting out smoke signals to these guys, and still nobody is really getting what's going on except half the people that got their head screwed on. So this is just crazy.
And
Where this
yeah.
it's it's it's
Also,
it's
Alex,
it's going crazy.
referendum is democracy. These are people voting to be part of Russia.
Right.
This is what referendum is about. People are voting to be part of Russia. If a referendum says, "Oh, we want to be independent. We don't want to be part of Russia, or we don't want to be. We want to stay with Ukraine," and I'm sure that would, Russia would, if that happens, then Russia would say, "Okay, that's fine. So that's what you guys want." But referendum is the majority. If the majority vote to be part of Russia, you can't say no to that. You have to follow the majority. This same thing happened with Crimea. And if the people want to be Russian, you got to let them be Russian. But the NATO president has recently said, I think he said yesterday, that these referendums don't count or something like that. I mean, it doesn't count if the it doesn't count if the Western governments say it. I mean, if it don't go along with the Western narrative, then it's not really a referendum, But
and this is a
that's
crazy thing. We are back to where we were in 2014 when they did vote.
yep,
And then we had a Minsk agreement, which they did not honor.
exactly.
Zelensky had 2 years to get this thing. Ignored it, ignored it, ignored it. Patrick Lancaster was down there filming and filming and filming. I don't know. I think this is going to. I think this is going to ask. Here's an interesting comment. Putin's playing the same game the West did in Serbia and Kosovo, their rules. Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents. I just think, here we go. 9-10 gamblers lose. Tell him he is in good company. Okay, I'm just reading some of the comments in the sidebar here. But yeah, I mean, I think he's waited long enough. And what else does he have to lose? Really, there's not much else to lose. Any other points that we want to bring up on the program today?
No, just Russia and Britain and also the Queen has obviously there was a big funeral going on, and we had a bank holiday, and the
Right.
numbers have come out, and they said that Britain has lost 2 billion of its GDP from this bank holiday.
Oh my.
Everything was closed. So this funeral has cost us 2 billion, and apparently there was about 250,000 people queuing up for 13 hours. 13 hours to see the Queen. Can you imagine that? Waiting 13 hours to see the Queen. I mean, I mean, do you like a lot of people have nothing better to do than wait 13 hours? I mean, there's also pictures of celebrities jumping the queue in Britain as well. Like there's somebody called Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby. Apparently, they jumped the queue because they are celebrities, while other people had to wait 13 hours for the queue as well. There's people who have been interviewed in the queue saying this experience is better than having kids. And some British people are crazy, and I don't want to bring up this diversity thing, Alex, but
Mm-hmm.
there's somebody who actually went to the queue to as a diverse person, and they said that 98% of the people waiting in the queue are white. You're not going to find any other diverse races waiting. So that tells you a lot about who's been actually waiting in the queue. It's almost like mainly generally white people have been waiting for 13 hours. You're not going to see any other kind of diverse mix as well. And I also want to bring up Biden. Biden has not been very happy. He's apparently put 14th. He was sat on row 14, and there's about 25 rows or something. There's not many rows. So he's more near the back than he is at the front. and and also the fact that Liz Truss wasn't recognised by the Australian media as well. When Liz Truss walked in, the Australian media was like, "Who's this woman? We don't recognise her." And I think, and then somebody in the background said, "Oh, that's Liz Truss. That's the new Prime Minister for Great Britain." I go, "Oh no, we didn't know who she was." And it's become a circus, Alex. The whole thing has become a circus. Biden then stormed off. He wasn't very happy, but he was sitting 14th. He stormed off. He didn't even say hello to Liz Truss. He didn't even greet Liz Truss. He just went. He was so angry that he had to sit on the 14th row. He stormed off and he went off. And he also doesn't like Liz Truss because Liz Truss did not call him when she became the prime minister. One of the things that every single prime minister does as the first point of call, you have to phone the American president as your first job. And Liz Truss did not do that. Her first job was to call Zelensky. She called Zelensky first, and Biden has not been happy about that. This is why Biden has not been happy with Liz Truss at all. And Liz Truss came out yesterday said, our trade deal with America, the free trade deal is basically out. It's completely destroyed. There is no way we are getting a free trade deal. So Britain becoming a puppet of the United States. We're basically a puppet for no reason with no
Mm.
benefits. We're basically barking like a chihuahua and being a puppet of the United States, and we get no benefit from it. The trade deal we were promised, we were not going to get it. So all of this puppeteering is
Well,
basically
you got
bearing
you
no
got the
fruit.
you got the currency devaluation that people called for when you left the EU.
That's true. That's true.
I had
Yeah, it's
guys
just
shouting at me saying, "What are you talking about? The pound is going 2 to 1 to the dollar."
yeah, and
Right.
also, Alex, the trade deal with the United States was one of the main selling points of Brexit. So
Yeah.
everybody was saying, "Oh, if we leave Brexit, we have a trade deal waiting for us." And now we've left Brexit. We have no trade deal with the United States. We have no trade deal with anybody. Anybody. We're just uh, out in the water, trying to stay afloat. It's absolutely hilarious. You cannot make this up, Alex. Yeah, let me tell you something. We've left the EU
Yep.
um, as part of Brexit. And people will say, "Oh, the EU is not very good anyway. Look at Ursula. Look at everything." But look, if you look at the whole picture, the overall picture, the values, the foreign policy has not changed. Everything Ursula is doing, we are doing. Everything Ursula is saying, Boris is saying, or Liz Truss is saying. So the values, foreign policy is exactly the same as the EU. The only thing different is the trade, and we're not having any trade deals with the EU. Um, Now there's all sorts of red tape. EU had free trade deals with over 190 countries around the world. The EU had really, really good trade deals. Now Britain has to start from beginning, and nobody wants a trade deal with the UK because when you're part of the EU, you're part of a collective, and you get really good deals around the world. But when you're by yourself, you're basically fighting for scraps. And this is what Britain has been doing last few years. They've just been fighting for scraps. Even the United States doesn't want a trade deal with Britain. We're basically left down the water to fend for ourselves, and it's absolutely hilarious, Alex. And I
Mm.
think Britain has basically what you would say they have put their face or heads in the sand, and pretty soon reality will smack them in the winter. You will smack them very hard. And the trouble with UK is, you have a lot of people with the stiff upper lip, and they're like, "Oh, blackouts cannot happen to us," or you know we're a developed country. All of this stuff, us collapsing cannot happen to us. The pound cannot collapse. So you have a very stiff upper lip. People are in denial in UK, while in Germany, they are making steps to save power. They are they're making steps. They are preparing for the winter. We're not doing any preparation for the winter. We're not doing anything. I think people in the UK are just in denial. They just think that nothing bad will ever happen to them because they are Britain. They are one of the most powerful countries in the world. We have nothing to worry about, and I think that's the problem. Really, people are just in denial in Britain, and I think people need to get their head out of the sand and just look at reality, what's happening around them. Not many people are
Mm.
doing that, Alex.
Well, I have to say, it's been definitely an interesting last few days here, and I think AJ, I just might have a surprise live stream if we can get a couple of people on the wire here over the weekend. I may be contacting you in the last minutes
Yeah, sure,
to
sure.
talk about getting a live stream. If we get Patrick Lancaster as well on the show, I know Danny from the Left Lands in New York has reached out for me, and of course, maybe Guelo 60 might chime in and give us a couple of seconds of his time, and he might have. How are you making out with him? Did you give him a shout? Have you been
Yeah,
chatting with
yeah,
him?
yeah. We've been chatting on
Okay, good.
WeChat. So I think
He's
he,
he's a
he
t-
yeah
he,
he,
he's a
he's a
tough
busy
one to get
guy.
live. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. I think like you said, he's only free in the weekends. but I'm quite busy on the weekend, so it's quite difficult. So, but we'll
Okay.
see. We'll make it happen. But I think, yeah, if you let me know, I'm always available. You know me. I'll try. I'm always trying to. I always got time for you, Alex. So don't worry. If you
Thanks, man. I
yeah.
greatly appreciate it. What we're going to do here is I just wanted to say thank you to all the people that have come out to this program on a weekly basis, as well as the moderators from AJ's channel. Thank you so much for that, guys. We really appreciate that. It's very helpful. And I think we won't shut the what is it called, the chat off just yet. We will allow you guys to, because everybody chats in I think the side chat for a good 5 minutes after the show's over. So we won't cancel the show. We'll just put on a bit of music for you guys, and we'll go out. AJ, you can close down the show, and then after you're done, I will go to a bit of music and some scenery shots. Okay? Terrific.
So yeah,
Thanks.
I just want to also say thank you for all the moderators out there. You know who you are. Really appreciate it, guys. Without you, I wouldn't exist. So a really, really big shout out for you. And also everyone that's been commenting and listening to our channel as well. Really appreciate it. You guys have been great. Our loyal supporters. Without you, obviously, we wouldn't exist. Without you, I wouldn't even have a channel. I probably would have given it. I probably would have given up months ago, Alex. But I think these guys are keeping me going. I really appreciate all of the support they are giving. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone for listening to us, bearing with us, and yeah, just keep it going, keep the support going. Do what you can to
I,
help support the channel as well. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And yeah, it really makes a difference. Back to you,
well,
Alex.
yeah, thank you, everybody. And my name is Alex from Reporterfy Media. I'll put a link in the description below there. Yeah, no problem finding me. I'm around. And we wish you guys a great night. And, well, we'll see you sometime next week, hopefully next Wednesday. Thanks, guys. You guys have a great night and a day from AJI here in China and in London. It's been a great pleasure. You guys take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.